Investigation by the BBC this week has uncovered widespread abuse and torture by the founder of one of the world's biggest Christian evangelical churches, TB Joshua. In the three-part documentary series, BBC Africa Eye reveals how the mega-church leader, who's accused of committing sexual crimes on a mass scale, locked up his own daughter and tortured her for years before leaving her homeless on the streets of Lagos, Nigeria. TB Joshua's daughter, Ajoke, has spoken publicly for the first time about what happened when she confronted him about sexually abusing women. TB Joshua's daughter, Ajoke, joins me now on Focus on Africa. Ajoke, thank you so much for speaking with us. Back in 2019, you contacted Africa Eye with allegations about TB Joshua. What moved you to do that?
It's so nice to have you. The first encounter I ever had with the BBC was as a result of watching Sex for Grades. I watched the documentary and I immediately connected with it. And for me, it became a question of, this is so like elaborate, and it went deep into my soul, and I was just like, I couldn't help it. So I reached out to one of the reporters on the case, and I encouraged that she looked into the sexual abuse that was happening within the church system.
So, Ajoke, how would you describe your relationship with TB Joshua?
Oh, it was a love-hate relationship. And I believe for him, it was just a question of trying to make sure that he stripped me of my identity, because it was such a love-hate relationship, and it came from a place of, pain. I can bet I was not conceived in love, because it's just difficult to imagine that a man who stood for something so big had all these things done behind closed doors.
Well, you explained in the BBC Africa Eye documentary that you decided to confront TB Joshua. Well, what made you do that?
I mean, it became bigger than me, and I've always been sympathetic about the plights of people. I've always been connected to people on a deeper level, for me. And it just got to a point where it became all too much, hearing all of these things didn't do it for me. I needed to confront him. I needed to ask those questions. I needed to find out for myself. I definitely needed to.
And what effect do you think your actions had on the so-called disciples?
Oh, it had such profound effects, because it just got to this point where for him it became a question of, for you to know so much, that means there's something looming in the air. And then he tried to break every form of relationship I could ever keep with anybody, no matter how friendly or platonic that relationship was. He had a problem with it, because he just lived in constant fear that someone was going to have him own onto his mistakes.
Oh, well, if I can just take you back to the documentary briefly, you explained that you were made to live inside TB Joshua's compound from the age of 7 with some of the followers or disciples. How did he run life inside this compound?
Oh, he was such an authoritarian, and for him, everything was about complete submission. For him, it was just a question of getting people from different walks of life and bringing them under submission to his commands. And it was things as subtle as walking into a room and everybody would just stand up like it was a choreography. And the older I grew, the more I knew that stemmed more from fear than from respect, because it was a two-way street. He would come in front of the camera on a Sunday service and preach, love, forgiveness, and all these things. And he was a completely different person, behind closed doors.
Well, Well, Ajoke, thank you so much for speaking with us here on the program. And just to let you know, the BBC contacted the Synagogue Church of All Nations with the allegations in this report. They did not respond to them, but said previous claims against TB Joshua have been unfounded. And you can watch Disciples, the Cult of TB Joshua on the BBC Africa YouTube channel and listen to the